What is going on? All right, so starting January 1st, 2020, California is going to be the first state to put into action a law that actually kind of governs the security around connected devices. And so let me start off by saying 100%, I am not a lawyer. I'm a geek. I build things, I code things. And I just happened to see this thing about California's law on connected devices, and I want to share kind of like what I found reading about it as a non-lawyer geek, and some interesting, and kind of my opinion on it, and also like some interesting thoughts, I think, on like where this trend on these on the legislation on like connected devices is going. So yeah, like I said, California is going to be the first state to put into effect a law going into the around the security of connected devices. And all honestly, like as a non-lawyer, when I'm reading it, it says like manufacturers of connected devices, internet-enabled devices, have to have reasonable security. And I don't know. There may be more to it when you actually, because like there's an actual bill, which I'm not, like I said, there needs to be an actual lawyer, but like all this stuff I'm researching is it's in like the data's got to be like secure behind like a login, and like it's got to be like encrypted and all that, but like it's tricky. First my thought is it's tricky because my definition of reasonable on sensor data from a person growing cucumbers in their garden is different. It's a different reasonable to secure that cucumber data than to secure, say, you had like a dieting or health app and there was like somehow blood pressure was going in as sensor values, or something like medical sensor values. My opinion of my idea of reasonable is much like stricter security. So like, so is all sensor data created equal? And like, do we have, like, if you just have a little app and you want to just know what your backyard, like what if you're in like Arizona and you just want to make sure your soil moisture is in the perfect spot so your grass doesn't get brown? Should I be required to go through all of the steps to making sure everything's secure on that side? For this grass, so like that's one thing, and luckily I think so. Like I have a little app. I'm building some IoT stuff, and like I'm using the Particle platform, and I'm almost certain that just because I'm on Particle, I'm covered from at least all the device side. I don't have to worry about the security. I think that's all. They have it covered, and they've got like all that stuff figured out. What gets a little interesting is, so I'm using the Particle platform and I'm sending all this sensor data to Azure IoT, and then I'm sending it, like say I have an Azure function that's putting it into blob storage, and just for testing or whatever, I don't want to secure the blob storage, so all that data the sensor data is public, and then there's an API to get a device's data so you can show it in the user interface or whatever. And like in my app personally, I have a login button, but I'm just getting a username so I can correlate like settings with that user, and all the sensor data is public. Like it's behind a REST API with no authentication. If I sold that into California, would I be violating this law? I'm almost certain that's a yes, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm almost certain that is a yes. And the idea is, like, all I could see is like when I was looking at YouTube and some articles, some legislations, they're all like just like you got to have some authentication. Is basically what they're saying. Is the data can't be wide open. But again, what happens if I have a cucumber farmer who's like, I just need to know if my cucumbers are flooding. I don't need to know, and I don't care if my neighbor knows what my cucumber's soil is at, or is that reasonable? A different definition of reasonable than, say, I'm a guy, I've got a device that goes into a surgical room and is checking for, I don't know, the temperature of something. That, to me, seems like a different version of reasonable. So I think it's good. I think it's really good. And I think it's telling. I think it's telling that we're starting to have laws going into place on connected devices that, with 5G and all of these things and platforms like Particle, it's getting easier and easier to create these connected devices. And I think now we're saying, like, if you're going to put sensor data out there, you got to be responsible enough to at least understand the security I don't even, that's a hard word to say. The security issues. Let's say issues. That's a much easier word. So yeah, so if you, but that's hard because like geeks and makers, which has been like up until now, a lot of the IoT and connected stuff has been done by geeks and makers, and like I think having those, it's going to slow down innovation for sure, and it's going to make the barrier to entry potentially higher. It depends. Because like I think if you're on a good platform like a Particle, and I'm almost certain, and I don't know I would love to know from Particle what the issues are with the security and what responsibilities I personally have with this data. But it makes me nervous because I've got this little app, and like I said, I'm the only one that's using it currently. I've got 2 devices, actually 2, but soon to be 3 devices, and I'm in Indiana, so there's no connected laws here. But like say I got a guy in California that wants to measure his cucumber garden. Can I give him this box and sell him this box without having to go along with these laws? But what I've been reading, it sounds like it 100% is, and it didn't say like reasonable is different in different like use cases. So like I think they're really putting a hammer on it, and it's going to be interesting to see how they enforce it. But I remember, like, if you remember back to the GDPR days and when all that stuff went into effect, it shook up a lot of businesses. It changed industries. But one of the things actually that was interesting out of GDPR is a lot of industries and a lot of businesses actually suffered. But there was actually a lot of people, if you could understand it and leverage it, where they were able to make great money and actually improve their business position because of that law, the GDPR. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm sure the trend is going to be more regulation for connected devices, which I don't disagree with. I think that's really important to like run towards regulation from that perspective, because the chances for having bad breaches of security based on sensor data is real, is 100% real, because there are applications like you don't want patient information flying out in the internet God knows where people can just like get to it without any issues. There could potentially be some huge, massive security issues. And then a lot of these IoT devices have like they have like locations, so you could like potentially steal a device. You'll know where things are published from, or like there's all kinds of weird issues that are social issues that are gonna come up with this new trend of the Internet of Things and the connected devices. So it's going to be interesting, and like I said, I just saw the article, and I was kind of digging into it, and I was like, what happens? I mean, does this affect me? I've got a little app that works in the IoT space with using the Particle platform. I don't know. I really don't know. So it's going to be interesting, and I don't even know like what the consequences are, and so I definitely need to research that, but I've got a hunch they're not good. If they're anything like, I know like with GDPR, you can find a holy crap amount of money if you violate GDPR, and as a consumer, I like it. I don't want people spamming me and sending my private data everywhere. So as a consumer, I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. So as a consumer of connected devices, it makes sense. As a maker, a builder, a programmer, I'm like, yeah, it's going to slow down innovation, because now I'm going to need to spend, like on my app, I have a wide open endpoint that whatever device ID you send it's going to get you all the data back. And that's easy it's super easy. It would take like a day or two to actually lock that down. But now it's something you got to think about. And I think it's going to be where you need to take responsibility for security more, and like, so that's why it may not be a bad thing. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's another thing I have to code, another thing I have to think about when I'm building these solutions. But maybe if you're like I said, if you're on a platform like we're on Particle, they may have a lot of this covered, because they like from the device to the cloud. I'm almost certain I don't have to touch that. They handle all that, like all that goodness is done on their end. I just know like once it gets into Azure, then you can make or whatever cloud platform you're choosing, or once the data is like in your hands and you're responsible for it, what do I have to do to make sure that I'm compliant with this data? So Looking at the article, it sounds like I'm gonna have to write some security code, just locking some things down. But I want to know like specifically what. So I'm gonna do a little more research. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting time for connected devices, and we'll see in 2020 what all comes from these laws. So again, if you like this video, you like IoT stuff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for more.